We dedicate this to the spirit people who walked before us, and to the people who will walk after us. The first spirit people from the center of the world netted this salmon. At Karamin was a spirit man. He made the salmon. He put them in a pool. When they got bigger, he put them in the river to go downriver to the ocean. When they returned, they were caught by a dip net. They taught us how to fish. That's why we do it this way. The first spirit people gave us the river and the salmon to survive. That's why we, Karuk, are called the river people.
That's what we live for right here. We like to give our fish to the elders. It shows a great amount of respect. Our elders are very important. Our babies are very important. And what we do this generation, our generation, is what's going to carry us on.
My name is Marceline Norton, and I'm a Hoopa tribal member. I'm a member of the tribal council, and have lived in Hoopa most all my life, except for when I was going to school and living just about 60 miles away because of work and schooling and all of that. My residence has always been Hoopa. While I was in the Eureka area, I always considered that my secondary residence. So, what I wanted to share is that as a Hoopa, we're considered, or I think that we're considered as a riverine people. Our valley is bisected by the Trinity River, surrounded by mountains. So traditionally, all of our traditional villages were adjacent to the river, and the river supplies so much sustenance for us, but it's a very integral part of our culture and our spiritual ceremonies. So as a young girl, one of the things that I remember is the fish dam that we had, and this was in the 1940s. It was that's a ceremonial event, and it's a religious event, but it also provided a lot of salmon for the people. There was a fish weir built across the river and through a ceremonial process, and then the men would catch the fish, and then what I remember going to that river bar, and it was at the Metdilden Rancheria. Metdilden means place of the boats. And so I went down with my parents and just remember seeing a whole river bar, just covered with salmon. And so the people from not only Metdilden but throughout the valley could come and take as much fish for their sustenance, for what they could use, and that was so that was provided to the people. That was the last fish dam for several years, for probably about 50-some years. And then just a few years ago, through one of our education programs, another fish dam was reconstructed, and it provided some fish for the people. And that was a really major event because a lot of community people came out, elders helped in putting it together. And so, and then we haven't had a fish dam since then. But that was, really significant in that it was one way of providing fish for all of the people and for their uses. The other thing that I wanted to share is the condition of our Trinity River now, as to compared to what it was years ago, and the stories that I've read is that there was such an abundance of salmon that you could almost walk across the river on the backs of the salmon. However, now, and especially this past year, the river was so low, and there was so much moss in the water that it wasn't even safe to swim. I took my dogs to the water, to the river, and only to where it was kind of swift, so that they would not be in the moss. And it's really disheartening to see the condition of our river, and as a councilman, I want to work on our water rights and try to restore as much water to the Trinity as possible. So the problem is all the diversion from the Trinity River. The Lewiston Dam and there's over probably 58% of the Trinity River being diverted down to through the Delta and then on down to Southern California. And so what we as a tribe need to do is really fight to retain and include back our original water rights so that it is sustainable for us and sufficient enough for us and also all the users on the Trinity River. Okay, thank you.
My name is David Arwood. I'm a fisheries student at Humboldt State University and a member of the Karuk tribe along the Klamath River. And right now we're in the process of trying to remove dams off of the Klamath River. And I'm not going to pretend to know all the details and nuances of the whole big agreement. It's this big packet. But I do know that there's one thing that's been discussed, and that is California's part of the funding for removing the dams. I think it's $200 or $250 million. And there has been talk about when the legislation goes through that they're going to tag on other bills that would be detrimental to the Sacramento Delta area, San Joaquin Delta. So I just want to say that whenever we do go to push this legislation through, we have to make sure, all of us need to make sure that there is no other bills attached that would be detriment to other tribes, water sources, or any other of our watersheds in the state, because I don't think fixing one watershed at the cost of another watershed is what we should do at all. So I just wanted to put that down on the record as well. Everybody knows me as Two Sticks, or my friends just call me Sticks, on the river. I worked up there in fisheries for a while, and the water, culturally the water is and the salmon are especially important to us. Our tribe is the Karuk tribe, California, and it's based on a salmon culture. Our ceremonies revolve around the salmon. The salmon was the main staple of our tribe, and I've watched, in my lifetime, which was probably already bad conditions to begin with, but conditions continually to grow worse and worse. When I first started traditional fishing at Ishipishi Falls, we would catch sometimes, like 100 fish in a day, and I thought that was pretty good. I was a young teenager, and I'd go down there and help pack out all the fish and everything. And then as I got a little older and I got to be able to get into clubbing and helping out and then getting into throwing in the dip nets myself, the fish, when the first year I was fishing, my uncle had gotten hurt, so I had to take over and do the fishing for the family. So there was fish like jumping, like every couple seconds you could see fish, and this is probably like in the early 90s. something like this, and there was a lot of fish down there, and caught like you could catch like 100 fish a day sometimes, like I was saying, and we went down there, and one year there was like only caught like a couple hundred fish the whole time, the whole season, and there's just like the fish just seem to be going away, and it's real scary. You think that they're endangered now and threatened, and those things lead to extinction unless you do something to turn it around. And I know there's a lot of work, but there's a lot of different issues. We for part of our ceremonies that we have to do, we have to bathe in the river, and now we have this thing, this Microcystis aeruginosa, this blue-green algae that's in the river, and you can't get in there. The levels are too high to get in. They advise you not to swim in the river. So how are we to perform our ceremonies properly when we're not even able to get in without exposing our liver to risk? There's a lot of other problems. I was talking with someone here, and I see like all these tailing piles, and they might have mercury and all other kinds of toxins in there. And all these tailing piles all up and down the river, they've just been sitting there for 150 years, and we need to do some sort of sampling and find out what kind of toxins they have in them and what kind of effects that those are doing on the river. There's some issues that are being addressed. People are studying some of the diseases and causes of the diseases and the temperature effects, and the dams effects, and there's a lot of work being done, but there's also a lot more that can be done. And there's always going to be, stuff to monitor. One of the things that I didn't like was that working with some of the state agencies. Sometimes we were doing studies on Scott River, and by law you are allowed to travel down a waterway. Whether there's homeowners there or not, as long as you stay within, I'm not exactly sure of the boundaries, but as long as you stay right within the water line there, you can walk through. But we weren't allowed to complete our surveys properly and get the most accurate data because the homeowners were protesting against the state, and then the state kind of just said, okay, well, we're not going to make a big stink about this. Well, in order to get the proper findings, and we need to have the right data. Best solutions. Removing the dams would be a great step. I'm hoping to see that happen. It sounds like it's going to happen, but seeing is believing. So that would be a start. Figuring out one of the big problems in the Klamath right now is these two parasites, Ceratomyx of Shasta and Parva capsula midnight bicornis is what it is, and they work together to affect the liver and the hindgut, and it's the spleen and the hindgut, and they're killing a lot of the young juvenile fish as they outmigrate to sea, and they're still doing a lot of studies on how they work, how their life cycles work. So that's been picking up lately, but that's one of the main big causes. It's trying to figure out how we combat that disease and how we can, what kind of water quality conditions, or if there's anything we can do to bring that disease under control, because it's only been in the last 20 or 30 years that they've found these parasites and started to notice that they're affecting the salmon. And this could be because of higher temperatures, different changes in migration. Like if the water is too low for a certain point, then the salmon will hold up and they won't begin their migration. And then when they finally get enough water, so the migration times for the salmon might have gotten pushed back to a point where the disease was more prevalent. So you got to look at these different things. And there are studies being done. I know Oregon State University is involved in a lot of it. At Humboldt State University, there's some work being done. So finding out more about that would be a good start. Like I said, we have a mine on one of our creeks that's just running out. Some sort of acid is leaking into the creek, and it just turns all the rocks red for like a half a mile stretch here, and there's like not a fish in there, and I swam through there to see no fish. I don't want to swim through there again because I don't know what I put myself through, at that point. But the evidence, there's just nothing living in that whole stretch, so we need to figure out ways to work to get rid of that. And so I guess there's some new technologies and some new processes being worked on that might help that. So we should look more into that. I talked to a man from the Sierra Foundation, I believe it is, and he seemed to have some ideas about things that could work. It was degradation, I believe, was one of the things he was talking about, using plants to take up the toxins in the soils. Different ways of stopping of extracting the toxins. I mean, the only thing, is that they used to say is how they could walk on the backs of the salmon. The salmon was so prevalent, We used to eat, a couple of pounds of salmon a day, and I caught 2 fish this year, and, we catch 200 fish a year in the tribe of 3,500 people or so now. What does that add up to? That's not even 1 fish per person for a whole year, and that was our main staple, that and the acorns were our main staples, and we just can't live that anymore. Now we have, higher diabetes, more heart problems, blood pressure, and for the different diet that we've had, because we co-evolved in that area with the salmon. While we were here since time immemorial, and our bodies co-evolved with that acorn and that salmon diet. And now, you change everything and we're eating Whoppers and, who knows what else, and it's going to have a real bad effect on your body, when you've lived that way for so many generations. All right, thank you.
Let's see here. Where do I begin? I don't even know where to begin. I guess from a title perspective, I'm community builder for calling back the salmon. And what does that mean? That it's about bringing prayer and ceremony to places at creeks and rivers where salmon have been disconnected from their original homes. So, and part of this is a great blessing in my life has been working with Native American spiritual leaders who have guided me down a path of learning old spiritual ways or spiritual ways of the past. And something that's taken place in modern history has been the loss of salmon habitat, the loss of kind of a disrespect for water, for the earth, for all of our relations. And as part of this, I was given the job of helping salmon return to the creeks and rivers where they've departed. So the responsibility that comes with that is bringing people together, Native people, community people, science people, to acknowledge, to let salmon know that we want them back in our communities, that they are missed. After the first assignment, so to speak, I worked on was in West Marin, where when Highway 1 was constructed from San Francisco really up to the Northern California coast, it was built in such a way that there would be creeks that would be buried, and there would be culverts put in to carry the water under the roadway. These could be 10 feet high, 20 feet high. So all along Highway 1 driving north was original salmon habitat where salmon were disconnected. So the first creek that I worked on with lots of people volunteering. There was Department of Water Resources, Fish and Game, parks, you name it. Lots of people working together, volunteers, to say we need to do something. And so salmon wild coho had been gone for 70 years, and through people coming together, I like to think that prayer was a major part of this as well, that after 70 years, we created an opening, a passageway. 1 coho came back the first year. I like to refer to her as Lily the salmon, because I don't know if she got a mate that year, but she made it back. The second year I was on the creek one day, and I would offer this prayer every week, and there was a ceremony that had to go along with the work that I was doing at that time. And I was always aware when I was at this creek of the number of mountain lions around, because there were always lots of carcasses, and there were some lions around there that were feasting quite well. But here I was in about January, and I would say this was 1999. I'm walking along the creek, and I'm hearing something, and I'm saying to myself, okay, mountain lion, I know you're out there. Where are you? And I look down in the creek, and the water is not even 8 inches deep. And what I see are salmon. They're the ones making this splashing noise. And there's just a whole school of them coming up the creek. And my brain could not accept it. Because my brain was saying, no, this isn't happening. But here's the real truth. So it's one of those things so in either case, salmon were disconnected on the West Coast by roads and kind of water diversions and so forth. But it was an incredible sight to see this native run of salmon only 1 year into it, knowing to go as high in that creek as possible. So that was a beautiful experience. So then, and I thought to myself, geez, now we have all of these passage barriers that can be opened up. And I was thinking, well, do I need to work on those? Maybe that's where I should be. And Creator sent me another direction. Creator sent me to east up into the Sierra foothills. And then I thought, my goodness, can salmon actually make it back all the way through the delta, through all this polluted water, all these passage barriers? Can they actually come back to their original homes in the foothills of the Sierras? Well, what I began to realize is this is where Central California salmon originally lived. They can't get back. They can't get back because of the number of dams that were built, either for hydroelectric generation or as what are called debris dams for pre-gold or post-gold rush, during the gold rush, to keep debris from totally filtering down into the delta. So dams have played had a major impact, and so you figure is in the 1900s into the 1940s, where these dams were being constructed, but what wasn't being constructed at the same time were passageways for salmon. So in either case, so my job then became, well, now I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but somebody's going to come to me someday and maybe they'll be interested in a ceremony here. And lo and behold, a science man from the South Yuba River Citizens League met me, and he goes, I know you were doing some work, some spiritual work on that creek out in Marin. Could you do something like that here? And could you bring that ceremony? And my response was, well, I can, but I first have to know the native people of this land. Who are the tribal leaders? Who are the people of the land? And so in doing that, I said, I'll need to pray on that. And so I did. In less than 1 week, I'm sitting in a little community gathering, and sitting in front of me, who is a tribal chief for the Chayaka Maidu people. So just like that, something came about out of a prayer, and I approached him, and now what am I going to say to him? What? Psych. So, and all I could say is the Creator has sent me here to speak with you, and He's sent me here to speak with you about salmon, and here is a river group that would like to. They have all the science in the world behind them. They have lots of supporters, but we still don't have salmon. The salmon still aren't here. So to balance this, we need a spiritual component. Will you help in this effort? Will you? And so he thought long and hard, and we talked over a number of weeks. And so we gathered at South Yuba River above the dam, and had a ceremony, a prayer, one prayer of just of asking forgiveness to the salmon people that says, please forgive us for ever allowing you to leave in the first place, for us forgetting about your importance to life. And so that took place, and that was in first moon of 2006, 6, 7, 8, 9. The tribe has now recreated a ceremony. The ceremony had been gone for 150 years. So now this year was the fourth annual ceremony to call these spiritual beings home, and I think we're getting closer. The tribe does their ceremonial work. What 2.5, 3 years ago, I guess it's 3 years ago, again, the Yuba River Citizens League sends me an email saying, if you have any expertise, we're having a federal energy relicensing process coming up. If you have any technical expertise to share, there's a public meeting, please join us. And I thought, well, yeah, I've got something to share. It's not science, and it's not bureaucracy, but it's about spirituality, and it's about salmon and the importance of salmon to culture. So go to a meeting in downtown Grass Valley, probably, 60 people in suits sitting around a big square table in a square. And one of the studies they want to conduct is called Traditional Cultural Studies. And apparently they're supposed to study the culture that existed prior to the dams being installed, and in being relicensed for the dam, how that culture can continue to be impacted. So there's no tribal people at the meeting, and there is no study. So I just spoke up and said, well, I'm here, and I would love to participate in the study and help study this issue as to what life was like before the dam, what life will be after the dam if it's relicensed, with the present conditions. And lots of reasons for non-tribal involvement in the process. As you can imagine, it's like very bureaucratic, very, very bureaucratic. So what I began doing is I said, well, we need to have some stories. So where are the stories? And so the first thing I thought of was like, well, what are the songs? Are there any salmon songs of this area? And speaking of which, what I began running up against, and others, was the question, did salmon really exist in this upper watershed? They really didn't. You need to prove that. Well, how do you prove that salmon were here? They're gone, but you're going to prove it through these stories. So where is the song? And so I started asking around, and everyone just throws their hands up. We don't know the song. I don't know. We're looking for one. There may be one here or there. So I met with a Mountain Maidu elder in Paynes Creek and spoke with her about it. And she said, you know what? I'm going to find you a song. I will find a song. And she sent me one day in all handwritten words from a man that was a Concow Maidu. And so I'd like to read that story. It's still not really a song, but I think the words truly are a song. So this story it's titled Big River by Arthur Smokey Jones. He was also known as Buckeye Man. And I'll try to do my best on reciting this. So, Big River, from where do you come? Big River, where do you go? You give life to the people all over this land. You bring mahi, the big one, back home. You bathe me in coolness. You take my great thirst. You share with all who possess a desire to live, to know not the hurt of not blessing what makes us last. You're as gentle as a deer, as ferocious as the bear. My world is small next to yours. So I ask you, Big River, from where do you come? Big River, where do you go? I've looked, I've listened, I've seen a great power that is, much greater than one. Please tell me, for I want to be like the water bug who dances for you. And then he concludes by saying, a person who prepares himself for life and death is a person who has looked about and has learned the meaning of harmony. So Big River, from where do you come? Big River, where do you go? You bring Mahi, the big one, back home. So I'd like to think that I know that that's a song, and I think we're just waiting for the right moment for that story, that song to be shared, and what a great day it'll be to see the big Mahi above Englebright Dam or Bullard's Bar or Folsom Dam or Shasta Dam or the large number of dams that are impeding the ability of salmon to come back to their original spawning grounds. And, you know, there's lots of issues. We've got global warming. We've got all these things going on with potential reasons for the decline of salmon populations. But certainly throughout the Sierras, this original spawning grounds are the indigenous homes of salmon. Why not at least make those available so that you can regenerate your species? And in relicensing, so we come back to bureaucracy, federal relicensing of dams. Well, it can be a win-win situation. Pacific Gas and Electric, or wherever the utilities are, can also become heroes in this process by just simply providing passageways from these dams and looking at water from an indigenous perspective, from a perspective that water is sacred, salmon are sacred, that we are connected to everything, all living beings that inhabit the land. So anyway, so that's my story.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
Hey, well, thank you for listening.
My name is Sherry Norris. I work with the California Indian Environmental Alliance, and we're an organization that works with tribes to engage tribes to work with agencies, and we also distribute information on eating fish safely, which involves the mercury that's in fish left over from the gold rush. So we've been working with the agencies on regulations and on fish consumption advisories and making sure that tribes are getting the information. And we've had comments from tribes that they want all the information, and we've had comments from agencies that if we give too much information, people get confused. So where do you balance that out? So we had to take materials from multiple organizations and agencies, combine them together, and try to make something that was more useful. We're also trying to get doctors to change their intake materials so that it is, do you eat fish, how much and from where, and they might know if that patient would be at risk. And if that patient's at risk, then they can go through the processes. And it's just new, much like lead was before, where people didn't really know about what it does in your body. So we do that. And we also are working on pilot projects. We're trying to get all the tribes in one watershed and an agency to work together, Department of Toxic Substance Control, specifically in the Cache Creek watershed, to see if we can't show a good working model for testing all of the plants, animals, sediments, and fish in the area that might be contaminated, so that all of the exposure routes that tribal members might come into contact with would be tested, instead of just the pieces that the sports fishermen are coming in contact with. So community meetings, if you can have it in conjunction with something that's like, for example, the RTOC, the Regional Tribal Operations Committee meetings, the EPA meetings, or if there's community meetings on water or fish that are already happening in a region, if we can go there and present at the same time, then interested people are already in the room. that just may not know about this issue. Also, getting out to healthcare centers, because that's where women and developing fetuses are the most impacted. So then your doctor has the information for you. And tabling at community events has been the best way so far. We've also tried some radio, and we need to get back into radio a little bit more and some more mixed media like that. So 125 years ago, or more than that, from the gold rush, we are left with the legacy of the mercury and other mining toxins like arsenic and asbestos working its way through our river systems now. And mercury is a neurotoxin, so it interferes with the developing fetus, cell development, language development, walking, the ability for the infant to suck, learning later, so permanent learning disabilities later on in life. Like, it could be as simple as I've taken this math test many times and can't seem to pass the test, or very severe, which doesn't happen as much in California, but it can end in mental retardation. So it's pretty serious stuff, and it doesn't leave. It's an element. So we are left with millions of pounds of mercury working its way through our river systems, and it's estimated it will cost California, Nevada, and Arizona $50 billion to clean this up. And we're hundreds and thousands of mines, abandoned mines left over from the gold rush, and mine features scattered throughout the state, Southern California, Central, Northern California, everywhere. And all of our water bodies are impacted at some level. So there are water bodies that are more safe, and there are water bodies that are less safe, and there are fish that take mercury into their bodies more than others. And so it's a matter of knowing which fish you're eating, where is it from, what kind of mine features are in the area. And not every water body's been tested, and just because it doesn't show up on the list saying it's impaired doesn't mean that it's safe. We can say that salmon is naturally, if it lives out its natural life cycle, it's low in mercury, and it's low in other PCBs and other chemicals like that. So what we would like to see is salmon restoration, dam removal, and to be able to tell people where safe places to fish are, not just where fish is bad. Because right now we're in a situation where young women are required to avoid practicing culture until after their childbearing years. And who passes on what to eat to the next generation? It's usually the moms that are feeding the kids. So it's pretty serious stuff, and we're hoping that we can make some changes in the future working with everyone.
My name is David Rain, or David Ortiz, depending on what parent you ask. My story is a story that happened just this year, and hopefully it'll be inspirational to people. That one person can make a difference. One person can make a difference. I went to the meetings for HCD, Housing and Community Development. We're all talking about drinking water here. Drinking water, 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 water. Drinking water, 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 water. And then we fill our bellies and we have to go to the bathroom, and that water goes where? We have to shower, we have to take laundry, and that water goes where? We worry about that. So they made these gray water laws. And the gray water laws said that there's a 100-foot separation from gray water distribution fields and septic distribution fields to potable water, right? 60 feet vertical, 25 feet horizontal. 100 feet horizontal. But for creeks, rivers, streams, and lakes, it was only 50 feet and a foot. And that's not fair. And they kept saying over and over again, no one's ever reported a sickness from gray water, from the water that comes out of your shower and your laundry and from your sinks and things. No one's ever reported a sickness. And I kind of smiled and laughed, and I went to every meeting and I kept saying the same things over and over again. You don't speak salmon. You don't speak four-legged. You don't speak creepy crawly. Towards the end, they started understanding what I was saying. So one person, me, going to those meetings every day, every week, all the way, 2-hour drive, once a week. I got a 100-foot separation for the creeks, rivers, streams, and lakes for California. All that Title 22 water that they're using to irrigate the farms and salting the soils, raising the salt levels, they now have to pull back 100 feet from the creeks, rivers, streams, and lakes. We still know that it's not enough. It's not enough. And I got 2-foot ground separation, where other laws say it's 3 feet. Unfortunately, Housing and Community Development and Building Standards Commission, they've already done it. It's already a done deal. But it just shows that if one person with a little bit of tenacity goes to these meetings and starts looking at the whole picture. That's why I got involved with the Tribal Planning Committee, was because once you see the whole picture, This is the same water that affects all the way up in Montana, where I'm from, up in the Blackfoot lands. Our glaciers are melting. It's all connected. It's all connected. So let's complete the circle. When we look at water, let's look at that drinking water, let's look at the agricultural water, and then let's look at the septic water. Complete the circle, and one person can really make a difference. Oh.
I'm Bruce Gwynn. I work for the Department of Conservation in the Division of Land Resource Protection as a staff scientist for the state, dealing mainly with water and infrastructure mitigation issues as they relate to impacts on land and open space. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I think somebody'd have to be very distracted not to wonder about water if they were growing up in Los Angeles. And it goes back to being really young, where I grew up in the flats. So you have the hills with the canyons and the streams, and we can still go and see the streams flowing in the hills. A lot of woods and houses, then the flats. Business and subdivisions, and then the canyons, the more nice subdivisions closer to the coast. And the streams were up here, and they were down here, but we couldn't see them through here. So I was working with my father, helping him. Right? So I was 5, and I could help a lot because he was digging a garden in the backyard, and he was digging out the clay and sifting it out and putting it aside, and then we started seeing these layers in the ground, because he's digging like French intensive organic gardening style. And so what is this? We started looking at it, and we were seeing the profiles of a stream. The same stream that I could go a few blocks one way and a few blocks the other way, and it was there. But in our yard, it had been flattened out. It used to be bean fields. 100 years ago, there was bean fields. Halfway up the block was the ranch house for the farm that was blocks and blocks of land. There were no blocks. It was just a bean field, a bean farm. So then they subdivided it, and later on they put a wall right next to our property. So in a wet year, we'd get a big puddle just emerging in our backyard because that buried stream was still there, and it would come against that wall in that parking lot, and it would be coming out. And when we dug down into it, and then I walk up and walk down, I realized that stream is still there. This place doesn't rain a lot, but it's got hills around it. It's a big basin, and that water would still be flowing out, but this city was stuck on top of the stream. So a couple of years later, my aunt, my mom's sister, and her husband, they bought a place out in Wrightwood. So we're driving out to go around Antelope Valley Freeway and curve around to the desert. And they just finished this big thing on the hill just before you go through the canyon. It looked like a bunch of tombstones in a very steep freeway with walls on each side. What the heck is that? It just reminded me of a graveyard built by an artist or something. I don't know what. Oh, that's how the water will come down to L.A. from Northern California for all of this city. Well, we would drive up to the mountains and look out over the city, the jewel box of lights, and I'd just imagine how many people were there. I was distressed for the rest of that trip, just thinking about, the uplift and the earthquakes and the steep mountains that were barren rock because they had pushed and broken apart. And this little thing was bringing all the water in from the north. I guess we had 2 other sources, Owens Valley and the Colorado River, but I hadn't yet put all of that together. I felt very vulnerable. If one earthquake or one crisis happened, even somewhere else, that water wouldn't be coming anymore. It wouldn't be a day before people would be distressed. So this isn't sustainable. This is a problem. And it's not that I thought about that, but it stayed with me. And when I started forming my professional opinions and going to work for water quality protection for close to 20 years, it really came home that we've set up a situation that increases the vulnerability of the population in order to have immediate needs met. So the needs are met, but the vulnerability is greater than if we had not done it in that way. And it fast-forwarded into recently, where I'm working on the water plan process, representing land resource protection and meeting with the different sectors when they're developing resource management plans, and developing and writing with some colleagues a chapter on agricultural land stewardship. That all went really well, a lot of talks, a lot of people from all over the state, from other countries coming and offering information, asking questions, and then we got into this land use issue. In California, land use is controlled by boards of supervisors. It's not controlled by the state, not controlled by the people. You go to the board of supervisors, if 3 of them say yes, you can do what you want. So we were looking at this land use issue and how that relates to the state trying to plan their water. Well, you're trying to plan water. We're not making LA County get all their water from LA County, but when a land use planning issue comes up in LA County, it's completely decided within their bounds. So there's a disconnect between providing the resources and making the decisions on how those resources are going to be used and what the future needs will be. So we were looking at this in land use for the water plan and started collaborating with some researchers from Santa Barbara, Bob Wilkinson, and he'd been studying this with the Natural Resources Conservation and Natural Resources Defense Council. He'd been studying just the issue of urban water, rainwater, and water needs. And it turns out that they calculated for Los Angeles, the rooftops, the roads, the amount of developed surfaces collect nearly the amount of water that's needed for that city. Now, they collected in a very short rainy season of 16 inches of rain in a good year, but there's so many impermeable surfaces the water can't get through, and then they right now have to build conveyances and deep ditches lined with concrete and pipes underground to move all that out right away. And it's considered a problem. The rain's coming, we've got to get rid of it. Yet they're also needing a lot more infrastructure, pipes, canals to be built to get more water to come in there when they do want it. And this is a nagging kind of a disconnect. So I'm saying, oh, this is wacky ideas. We should be collecting the water on the roofs. Well, Bob Wilkinson said, yeah, you know what? They do get enough rainwater. They could meet most of their needs if they had the means to collect it and use it. And you know what else? It's required in Japan. When they build new buildings in an urban setting, that's a part of the design. It's not like they're retrofitting or making some special. Oh, of course. You can't just dump your rainwater out into the stream. You catch it, you save it, you use it. It was so strange to realize that in another culture, in another moment, it's considered obvious and necessary, whereas in our culture, I brought this up with the people who build infrastructure for water, they say, well, that would be expensive. It'd be a lot of little projects everywhere. You say, how much does a big dam cost? How much does a canal cost? Those are expensive, aren't they? You can do a whole lot of little projects without the social resistance and keep working and keep building those things, turning floodwaters, turning rainwaters into useful waters as close to where they're falling down as possible. And so it's kind of a full circle from being nagged as a little kid, going through school, trying to make a career in life, and being drawn into this mystery of the state's water and saying, well, why couldn't we do this? And in fact, the answer is we can, you know? So that's my water story for today.
On the other hand, some of the issues have nothing whatsoever, you know, and the way I look at it, when we're talking about water, that is something that when I hear, what I've been hearing is the fact that, you know, that one day that it won't, it's a possibility that when they hear somebody say they're killing the water resources. Well, you can't kill water, you know, because it'll always return in one shape, form, or another. But I think what's going on here is that we have a lot of agencies who are now starting to realize that with their business or their finances or whatever the issues they have involved with the water, they didn't look at the Indian point of view and how it benefits them, not only Indian, but all other living forms within that area. So we get back, because Indians always talk about Mother Earth. Well, you know, and I heard today and yesterday in regards to this global warming, and so what I'm saying is, what does global warming have to do with the water issue? The global warming issue is not just Indians, but it's also other entities, agencies, governments, and countries that contribute to that. And they're all caught up with the fact that you know, they want to development, you know, tear the mountain down, build that bridge, put that dam up, and see all those things are affecting. In our case, in California, I would have to say, starting out with the gold mining, that's a big one. You know, when you remove a mountain which had a purpose, and now it's no longer there, parts of it anywho, it opens up a wound. And you can never, you can't put a Band-Aid on it. It's going to continue to erode. okay? And then from that you get silt into the water streams. And that silt will go down north, south, wherever the way the waterway goes, and it's just going to build up and pollute other areas. It cuts off the air, the oxygen for other life forms that need it. And you know, when you get rid of the, what would they call it? I'm trying to think. Microscopic animals, I guess you could say at one point. If you look at limiting them, then you eliminate the little fishes that eat from them, and then you eliminate the bigger fishes that eat from them, and then, you know, they just decided, not that they don't want to come back, it's the fact that they can't. Such as the salmon, you know, you build dams, well, you know, unless they got legs, they're not going to get over that. You know, you build ladders, but, you know, how many of them are going to succeed to get there? I mean, and these salmon have been doing it for years and years. But when you put in things that don't belong in the water, such as chemicals, as in one example, you're not only killing the fish, but you're killing other life forms that all these animals are dependent on. And then you get into the idea that supposedly we're talking about sacred waters and sacred lands and the water that runs through them, and that's how our life sustains from it. Well, that's another issue in itself. And so the non-Indian, when it comes down to it, those are things that they were never concerned with to begin with. So now we're looking at one way of saying, you know, for the last 200 years, they've been caretakers of this country or this world or the Mother Earth. And look what they've done. The Indians have been here since, or some people will say indigenous. In my case, I'm saying I'm Hamawi, have been here over 2,000 years as far as we know. And we've never done any damage to this country. We were good caretakers, you know, and we still here today survived. A gentleman that here, his name's Snow, and apparently he's talking to our Indian people today in regards to how our people can help him preserve our sacred areas in regards to sacred waters. And my understanding is there's a bill or a prop that's coming up in our next voting that is saying that they want to build this canal that will take our waters down south, and that's going to affect a lot of species, you know, and it even shows you here. But my way of thinking is that, you know, they're not even dealing with our issue today, and we're talking about cleaning the water, not distributing the water.
The Department of Water Resources?
Yeah. Yeah, that was DWR, yeah. Okay. But anyway, yeah. But no, you know what was real strange? I was talking to this young lady, a friend I went to school with, and she was on her way out because she works down south. I'm up north, she's on her way home. And we were talking about him, and he was sitting right there. And I know he heard me because he had to use the restroom, so I went up and I said, you know what? I don't want to, you know, but I'm just saying, you know, there's a lot of Indian folks in here don't agree with, you know, your point of view. And I'm, you know, and I understand, you know, where he's coming from because he's dealing with other agencies as well, right? But to come here and listen to what we're saying, I'm wondering, is he really going to go back and share this with his constituents in regards to, when I say constituents, I mean other, what would you say, well, people down south, I guess you'd call it agriculture, other communities that need this water, you know, will they be informed of where this water is coming from? You see, that's the, you know, but anyway, that's kind of a hard issue to deal with. And we're in the 21st century, and it's a bad thing.
You know, I'd written down some things about the logo that are inside of the pamphlet, but one thing.
Oh, so you designed the logo for the pamphlet?
Yeah, yeah. This logo, but it's more stretched.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I'm out here silk screening T-shirts too, like kind of unprofessional style, but it's coming out okay. But yeah, the one thing I did want to talk about is having a relative over here from down south, from one of the same reservations. I'm affiliated with the Rincon and La Jolla bands, you know, reservations, and so one of my relatives, Thomas, came up actually, and he has the same relatives as me, And one of them, his name was Henry Rodriguez, and he was really instrumental in a lot of the water movements, the water rights movements down south. And actually, he passed away, unfortunately, but he has a scholarship I just saw online for water, for people who are into doing native water rights, as a future and stuff, or interested. So that made me real happy. And, I just wanted to be able to honor him and be part of something that he was part of. And then I knew he was like totally serious and felt really important. Felt was really important. And he was friends with a lot of the elders here that are working in the water rights too. So I thought it was a real honor for me to be able to come through. But I know that we're fighting for water rights down on the reses down there right now too. So, and also in town here in Sacramento, we're fighting against Nestle's coming up and trying to steal our water and sell it back to us. So. It's just getting crazy. The corporations are buying up the water and trying, they're not going to be able to get away with it, you know what I mean? And people are going to have to fight against that. And that's what we're doing now, And hopefully in solidarity we work together and make it happen.
I'm from El Maui. That's Northern California, Northeastern California, up just under Mount Shasta. Well, I have a beautiful, beautiful country to live in. Well, my story is about, to begin with, I wasn't born 20 years ago. I was born 73 years ago, when the water was clean, when you could go to the springs and drink for free. Nobody owned them. It belonged to all of us. Anybody could go there and get a drink, wash your face, say your prayers. You can't do that anymore. The water was clean. Right now we have the Pitt River that runs through our land. We have the Hat Creek that runs through our land. They dump into Lake Britain. All three are polluted. All three are polluted. I'd never allowed my children to swim in that water because I was afraid of it. When I was a child, I swam in all the rivers, drank all the water, never had a problem at all. We have people that are dying, and young people too, like 45, 50 years old, dying from drinking the polluted water. And because they did when they were a child, they believe they still can do it. Even though you tell them it's polluted, they don't understand pollution. All they know, it's still the water that runs by their place. So it's a horrendous thing. It's just a horrendous thing to have to be always have all this water. There was a gentleman in this conference that made the comment, I wished I was like the people up north with their creeks and their waters and their lakes. And when I heard that, I said, no, you don't. No, you don't wish that, because you have a bunch of polluted water that you cannot utilize for drinking or swimming. People do it. I don't understand how they can allow their children, if they care for their children, how they can allow their children, because that's just as dangerous as putting them in front of a drunk driver, to me. So all these things that happened through the years, it was agricultural. The Cattlemen's Association is really strong up there in that country. And what they do, they allow their cattle to graze and do all their business right there. And then it runs off right into the river. But that wasn't so bad. Now we have rice farmers that came in. And they have all their pesticides, insecticides, and fertilizers, and all of this. And they dump all of that into the river. We have the loggers up here on the mountain with all their greasy, dripping machinery up all through the mountains and everything, tearing everything up and everything. And part of the problem is we have so much sledge coming down after they cut the trees down. There's nothing to hold the dirt up there. And when it rains, it all runs down and plugs up the creeks and things. It's just horrendous what I call them the multinationals have done to this land up here, this beautiful, beautiful land. And if you don't live there, if you just drive through, you really admire it this time of the year. It's beautiful. Autumn is one of the prettiest times of the year up there. We have all 4 seasons. It's like living in heaven. And it has been since I was a child. But the water, none of the water is any good. And it is horrendous. And I think it should be altered some way. That's my purpose of being at this water conference, is to see if there's a solution to some of these problems. Oh, yes, I think that we have solved a problem. It's going to take a while, and it's going to take congressional action, but I believe that's the solution. I heard that in there this morning. I wrote every word down. So I'm pretty sure, and that's why I'm here, is to get some solutions to some of this horrendous outrage that's been perpetrated against the land, against the people, and all things. Not just we as human beings, that is detriment to the four-legged, the winged. All the aquatics are being impacted. You know, all these things. I'm a cultural resource person, and my duty is to preserve and protect all of Grandfather's creation. And so when these things happen, they happen to my entire family, which is the four-legged, the winged, and all the aquatics, and everybody else there. And it's gonna, I want to see when my great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren can go and drink at the Hat Creek like I did, to swim in the Pitt River and swallow half of it if you want to without being sick. All these things I want to see for my great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren. So that's the end of my story.
Hi, my name is Donna Miranda Begay, and I'm from Lake Isabella in California. So I'd like to share our Tabatalabo water story. The story actually is a story that came from the efforts of a long time ago in the early 1900s. The anthropologists Emily Boglin and also her husband Charles Boglin came to Kern Valley and had worked with the Tabatalabo tribe. At that time, there was three bands, the Bakalanchi, the Palagayawan, and the Pakanapul. And today, the Pakanapul band strongly exists still in the valley with the language. And it was Francis Phillips who told the story in our language. And we got a hold of the recordings about 5-6 years ago. And it was only recently that we were able to transcribe that tape that was spoke in Pakanapul. We were able to transcribe it into English. And so this is the story coming from Francis Phillips. It's an autobiography recorded by Erminie Boglin in 1933. It's a Tabatalabo ethnology. It was published in 1938 by University of California, Berkeley. And just kind of an introduction about Frances. She's age 68. Let's see, her father was Tabatalabo and her mother was Koso. She provides the story, and her daughter, Lagora Tungate, who's age 40, her mother was half Tabatalabo and half Koso, and her father was Tabatalabo. Translates this story from Pakanapul into English, and again, the story was told back in 1933. There was one time when we were living over a chakal. Chakal is a town, in a mud and brush house. That's the way the Indians used to do. They just moved all around. They camped under some willows, anywhere. They'd keep moving all around all the time. A big earthquake came and frightened everybody. I was a little girl then, about 7 years old, so back in 1872. Afterward, my father used to tell me about the earthquake. I remember only a little bit, but the springs got white like milk when the earthquake came. Everybody cried and went around shouting. There was lots of people living at Chakal. Pedro Neto, another relative, she was also living there as well. We had to get water to drink from the river in Kernville. The water in the springs was hot and white, just like milk, for about 3 days. Nobody would drink it. I just remembered a little bit about it. I know all the children were frightened and cried when the earth quaked. That's a story by Francis Phillips in 1933. Wanted to kind of relate a current tribal perspective about this water story. I sat down with our tribal council a couple months ago. We talked about this story and what it means to us today in regards to some of the current things. So I'll read our statement here about that. And again, our council members, there's Betsy Johnson, there's Robert Gomez, there was also Samantha riding Red Horse, and Josie Peterson sat with me during this discussion. And they're all Tabatalavl people. Today, there is a dam that has created Lake Isabella. This dam was built on a fault line. If the engineers of the 1940s had read our tribal story about Kernville and earthquakes, they may have picked a different location. Because of the Lake Isabella dam location, there has been ongoing seepage and big concerns for the structure of this dam. This has caused the release of a lot of water from Lake Isabella. Several of our old tribal village sites and burial sites are located under Lake Isabella. However, as the water level drops, there is a greater risk that our villages may surface and require immediate protection. Today, quality drinking water is a major concern for our tribal people. Just as we know not to drink the water from a milky spring, we also have learned recently from the Department of U.S. Indian Health Services not to drink water with arsenic or bad bacteria. We are working on getting improved access to quality drinking water from natural springs and underground water wells. Our headwaters are from Mount Whitney and through Yosemite and the Sequoia National Parks. Forest lands and meadow wetlands need to be properly managed to help protect water flows, and water cycles. We believe that if there are 5 good snows, we will have a good pine nut harvest, and lots of acorns. We watch from Kern Valley for the storms and the clouds that come from after a fire. Flash flooding can be dangerous in the mountains and desert areas. We make sure to watch for these signs: sounds of thunder, gray clouds, and smell of rain with wind. Sustainable water systems include the ability to plan, develop, and manage the usage of this valuable cultural resource. Water is pa'al, sacred and important to all. In the past, we had spiritual rainmakers. Today, we continue to whistle for the wind that we may bring our rains. I want to say thank you for the opportunity for the story and the opportunity to talk about our history.
My name is Consuela Vargas, and I'm from the Pit River tribe. I'm from the Hamaui band, and I'm here to talk about Medicine Lake and how my stories from my ancestors about Medicine Lake and how it pertains to my native people and how we use the Medicine Lake for medicine and ceremonies. Medicine Lake's important to us as Pit River people because we had a lot of gatherings there back before colonization and before the invasion. We had a lot of ceremonies like marriage ceremonies, different seasonal gatherings, place where our people went if they needed medicine. The water to us is sacred. It's for medicine and healing, and so we used the water, and we still use the water to this day for healing purposes and our medicine. And the Medicine Lake used to be a volcano, and it hasn't been active, but it's still medicine to us as Pit River people, and there's a lot of other tribes that have Medicine Lake as their sacred site as well. Right now, Medicine Lake is being under attack. There's this geothermal company that is wanting to use the water in the lake to they're going to do some contracting and build some housing around that area, so they want to use it to generate the housing for their housing market, and that's kind of where the tribe is stepping in saying, no, this is a sacred site, you cannot do this. And so right now we are in court. We have lawyers working for Medicine Lake to protect our site, and because it's our prayer area. This last time I went to a ceremony up there for the Medicine Lake gathering, we have it every year. And then there's other gatherings we have where we go there with our elders and we pray for them in the water. You know, a lot of people some people have cancer, some people have, there's one elder that had bone cancer and really painting a lot. So we went and took her in the water and we prayed for her for, you know, about maybe a good half an hour. And then she's, you know, she hasn't been hurting since. And then also with my mom was having some kidney problem, and we took her there and we prayed, you know, for her in the water with sage and everything, and you know, it really helped her, and so she hasn't been hurting since. And she's been to doctors and they've said that she's, you know, her kidneys are functioning better than they were before, so that's a good thing. That's a blessing. The Creator has blessed us. Right now our issues are with Medicine Lake, that the company is trying to use it and abuse our sacred site, and so we've been with the BLM, you know, protesting the BLM on that because they're trying to, you know, collaborate backdoor deals with the company that's trying to, you know, take the water and contaminate it. And there's a lot of boats that, you know, go in there. It's kind of, there's like a couple of cottages that are there on Medicine Lake, and last time we went to the gathering, there was a lot of dead fish in the water, and the year before that and the year before that I didn't see that. And then the water's like kind of dwindling, it's going down more. And so we've been trying to, you know, have an action committee to protect the water. We go around and we pray for the lake. We circle the lake. When I go to Medicine Lake, last time I went to this past gathering, and we were walking around the lake, me and my sisters, we did well, they're not really my sisters, but they're my like native sisters. We did a walk. There's about 30 of us. We walked around the lake. It took about 2 hours to go around the lake, and we were seeing a lot of dead fish in the water, and I mean, it didn't seem like it was like the year before and the year before, and so and then the water looked like it really kind of dropped more, and so we were like, you know, we know that some of the things that are happening to the lake might be, you know, deteriorating the lake, and so that's why we're protecting the lake. We haven't seen a lot of eagles as we used to see a lot of eagles around there, and I know when we went to the ceremonial lodge, there was one eagle in the pine tree, and stayed there until we got out, actually, and so it was pretty good. But there was a lot of eagles that are not there anymore. I'm thinking because of the fish. A lot of the fish are dying off, and then a lot of the water is depleting, or however, you know, getting lower. And then, so I've been kind of active with the Medicine Lake gatherings, going, and also going on protesting. We protested the BLM in Alturas, and we protested over there at the Federal House in San Francisco and in Oakland. And so we've been trying to put pressure on them to not make these backdoor deals without us as our Native people, because, you know, that is our sacred site, that is our prayer site, and I mean, I wouldn't want that on anybody. You know, we're not going to go to, you know, somebody's graveyard and, you know, mess it up and dig up people as they did to us. You know, we've been put through a lot already with a lot of genocide and stuff, so I don't know why they continue to, you know, mess with their sacred sites. But it is a fight. We're in it until, you know, until the end. A lot of things about Pit Rivers we don't like to give up, so we're going to be there, you know, until the end. And hopefully the lawyers and whoever we're working with will see on our side, you know, do whatever they can to protect our site. And then also another thing is that's really important. What we need to do is we need to get the word out to more Native communities. Before we used to have a conglomeration of tribes, you know, supporting. Now we kind of have just our tribe and then a few other tribes. So we need to bring back, you know, those tribes that were supporting before. I think the reason why they've kind of stepped away is because it's an illegal process, and, you know, that's good in a way, but then we still need to put pressure on the BLM. We still need to put pressure on this company that's trying to, you know, rip us off for our water. And so I'm really glad coming here to the Water Summit today. I did get some things out, And I really know that, water is important to us all as human beings, and especially, the Medicine Lake water as our sacred water that we use for our elders who are children. I mean, we drink the water, I drink the water. I mean, it's, to me, it's our medicine, and it's what our elders have told us, to use if we're sick, if we're ill, if we need help. That's what our elders have instructed us to do, and that's what we need to do, is listen to our elders and listen to our stories of what our people have told us in the past. And, so it can be not just the past, but it's our future as well, because we learn from our past and we go on for the future and how we can better our lives. So that's kind of about it about Medicine Lake, and hopefully, I'll have more Native tribes, standing with us, because if we're standing, together as one, we could, fight the beast instead of standing single-handed. I mean, it's more harder that way, but we'll still be there standing, So, thank you so much.
We have events out there pretty often. The Veterans Day celebration is coming up. Our water, how we're getting our water that day is going to be from the generator. We have to run a generator to get the water?
No, not the water, the lights.
The lights, I mean.
Well,
okay,
see,
well,
the
we've been occupying it out there for like 2 years now, myself, with a few of the other people that are on the DQ Unity Coalition. We've had to haul our own water in there for the last 2 years because the water is contaminated. Susan Reese, the board members, Genevieve Silly, Jim Rose, and the board members, Margaret Hoagland, they're aware that we occupy out there and that we live out there with no water. And the health board came in there and they closed it down, and
we're still there.
We're still there. We live in a tent. We live in the tents outside of the school itself, but on the same grounds. And we're still hauling water to this day to use it for our own personal hygiene, to use it to flush our bathrooms, to use it for cooking. If we have to get propane and stuff like that to cook, heat water for coffee or something, we have to bring water in to do that. And it's like about 12 of us that actually...
Sometimes off and on, yeah.
Yeah, 12 of us that kind of rotate, people that want to stay out there to keep an eye on the place, to make sure it doesn't get damaged or things don't walk off the property.
That's why we're there.
That's why Susan lets us stay there on the property, because there's a lot of valuable things that people could remove from the school itself. And
we're like the caretakers.
We just haven't had anybody offer us any outside help for water.
The only thing that's helping us now is the Army Corps. They're cleaning up. They dug wells. They're cleaning it up, and they're getting a grant to do that. And after that, then our school will start up again. Because that's the main thing is we can't drink the water. We always couldn't do that. It's going to be 39 years now since that school was up and going, and out of the 39 years, it's been that way. And it used to be an Army depot before. It used to be like RV, and then the natives stayed there and occupied it a month, and then after that, then we've been there since. Off and on, they've been trying to close it and whatever. So this time, the board said that we got to get it cleaned up. It's poison water. It's not good. So that's what they're doing. They're cleaning it up. They should have it done in 6 months. But we don't mind bringing the water. We have big things. We flush our toilets with the water. We do everything with water. We don't take a bath because I live at my house, but I commute back and forth. My daughter, she's here. She stays there off and on. She stays there because they have important things, and we're watching the school for the board people until we get our school up, because there's been a lot of vandalism there at the school. And that's why we're staying there. And we don't mind not being with water, because we've been there 2 years now, going to be without water. And when they did turn the water on, the pipes are not good underneath, so they had to turn it off because it was flooding. And in the kitchen there, they had a pipe that was not good. So, we didn't mind it, because we come and we bring our own water, bottled water. We always had bottled water there. We never drank the water. So now the Army Corps is coming in. They got a grant. They're fixing it, and that it's going to be these. They said they might turn it off this week. They might turn it back on because they've been already 3, 4 months now. They've been working on the wells and doing the alcohol or something. I don't know. They described it, what they're doing with the wells, and they cap them and they purify them because they have big tanks that come in.
Rain for rent.
They come in and they purify the water and then they let it out, and then they have wells underneath, a lot of wells, and pretty soon we can use the water again. This time we can drink the water. Before we couldn't.
So maybe you can back up a little bit for me, and for people who will see this who don't know a lot about DQ.
Yeah, I know a lot. I've been there
a little bit of history
39 years.
And,
39 years.
And who is the DQ Unity Coalition? I know the
Me,
school
her.
is closed down, but
well, it's not really closed down. It's closed down for the students and whatever, but it's really still there. It's just not function. It's not going yet, but we are going to try to get it. We've been trying to get it in. We've been getting board members. We're getting all that, and they were fighting a battle against other things that were happening there, and then the battle stopped. And what our interest is now is, hey, our school's got to go up. We got to have a place for our Native people. That school's been there since 39 years. Going to be 40 years. And out of that, I remember all for us, for Native people. That's the only place that we had. And a lot of things had happened. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of whatever. But you know what? We have to go ahead and keep going. And that's what we're worried about. For our Native people, we need the culture. That's what the school's about, doing our culture and stuff. But there's a lot of bad seeds in there that cause it not to go up. There's a lot of that, and that's what we got to realize. Hey, we got to go on, keep going, and that's the main issue there, and the water too, and all other things. Yeah, and a lot of people have died for that school too. A lot of people have suffered there. The people that were there the whole month stayed there without water, without electricity. And one of them that was there was my sister. There was 14 of them, and it's in the newspaper. You can see they occupied it 1 month. And when they occupied it, these people came in, the ones that they occupied it for, and then they took it over and they said, hey, we're going to get our school. You like Jack Forbes and late David Risley and all these guys. But they don't understand is that they didn't stay there like the students did. They didn't stay there. And I remember when my sister came to our house and I was listening, I was only 13 years old. She told my mom, hey mom, we might go to jail. And she goes, what do you mean? She goes, well, we're going to take over this Army depot. And she goes, well, is it a federal recognized building? And she said, yeah, it is. He goes, you know what? You go on the act, I think it's a Brown Act or some act, that anything that has federal, the natives can take it over and stay there a month and they can have it. So that's what they did. They got their paperwork in, and Davis was trying it too. They didn't make it, so that's how they got that. And they said 14 to 15 people came over the fence and stayed there. They didn't have no water. We had to come in and bring them meat. We had to bring them water. We had to, and they didn't have good water. So they suffered, and that's why yeah.
Hopefully we'll get water someday soon.
And a lot of people say, it's a hopeless case to go over there. It's not going to go open, but you know what? We're there to
keep the hope.
Yeah.
We have faith that it's going to go back someday up like it was before as a school.
Yeah.
And our Native American children will have that opportunity one day again. Just have hope.
Sounds like water is a pretty important step, and it might happen soon, right?
Yeah.
We're wishing for the best for DQU.
Yeah, for the water and the streams and the beavers.
Well, everything has a dollar bill on it these days.
Yeah.
I mean, there's repairs that have to be done. There's standards and codes that have to be met.
Yeah.
It isn't just us, I mean, that can do these things. We need to get our community involved in, like I said, local or state or city, county, whatever it takes. Yeah. Maybe they'll step forward and help us with these issues. I mean, we're just a small portion of people. We can't do it alone. That's why we have our board members. So we're hoping that our board members will make the progress for the people, the little people like us that want to have the opportunity to have a school someday.
And good water too.
Yeah, not contaminated. Well, that's all I have to offer.
The trees are dying of thirst. Well, because of the rain came, they're starting to get green again, but it was getting really yellow.
Thank goodness the season's changing, so we'll get some natural water for that. Yeah, maybe our grass will go back green. And I mean, what can you do? There's nothing. Our hands are tied. We can't do much. You just reach out to the public and let them know that with their assistance, maybe we can go a little further to for the next generation.
Eskimos have babies. They rub their noses together and the little boogers fall out. I've been in judo for a long time, and I would get out there and work out, and then when I was done, I would walk off the mat, sideways, like an old bear, because the Indians walk that way. We're taught to pick up our feet. And the Japanese folks were all sitting there, and they would go, "Oh, what kind of Japanese is he?" My wife said, "He's not Japanese, he's Indian." I said, "What? I've never seen that before." But Leslie was talking about that, right? Talking about her Japanese connection. And I always tell them, you're our brothers. That's why you walk the way you do. You shuffle your feet. If you had to walk 2,500 feet across the ice, you'd shuffle your feet too. It's slow. Okay, last one. My niece came home the other day. She lives up there in Alaska. And it's just, down here we just don't picture it. That up there in Alaska, just out there, nothing out there, Maybe some igloos. So then she said, there's crime is in Alaska. I said, crime? Wow. She said, yeah. She said, they caught this guy. He was out there peeking around the igloos. They arrested him. I said, oh my gosh. They took him in and they booked him and they said, what's your name? He said, Tom took a look. I liked Chris's serpent story today. That was pretty good. And we hear about our water baby stories. So in my position paper, I ended with why is our water sacred? And it's because you have to make offerings. So this story, though, is that it was way back. My uncle used to talk about it. He lived to be almost 90 years old, Uncle John. And it's back to the headwaters of the San Joaquin River. It's way down in a canyon. It's deep. You got to come off the top of those mountains, those bluffs, follow the old Bear Man Trail down past his cave. You get on down there deep in that canyon. You run across 8 10-foot rattlers. You don't have to be scared of them, because they're not scared of you. Only the smaller ones are scared of you. So that's the one's going to bite you. The big ones won't bite you. But they're scary. So you get all the way down to the river. You can't get back out except to climb that same hill, get back out of there. So why would you go down there? He said, oh, best fishing you ever seen. Really big trout down there. I said, oh, wow. He says, but my elders told me you have to make an offering. You have to make an offering on your first fish that you catch. put them over on the side, because the black snakes will come out of the river and they're going to eat that fish. If you don't make no offering, they're going to eat you. So him and Aunt Daisy, they went clear down there to go fishing. They made their way down in there, and she reminded him, she said, "Boo," she said, "you better make sure." He said, "You make offering over here." "Okay." He said, "Okay." So he put his fish in over there, and out come those black snakes. They came up out of the river, and they ate their fish, looked at him, and they went back. And after that, they had a great fishing time. He said, could barely haul the fish out of the hill, out of the canyon. But it's interesting because, you know, we talk about those black snakes all the time. I used to, part of our, you know, our story today is where are our fish? Where are the things, the cultural traditions that we once did? We used to spear suckers. Oh, so much fun. Make these spears out of the end of pitchforks, tie them onto a big pole, get our big gunny sacks, and off we would go out to the little tributaries. Find the little creeks and get in there and try to spear them suckers. That was a lot of fun. But my brother, Tomcat, he didn't like spearing fish, but he sure liked catching them coach. So he said, "Look, I'll give you tricks." He says, "You could go out there and spear your suckers and have a good time, but you're only going to get about 3 or 4. He says, "And we brought 2 sacks, 100-pound sacks." He says, "And we got to fill them up. And we got to hurry up." He says, "So I'm going to show you how to do that." So he says, you bend over the bank, and you stick your hand way up beneath there where the tree root comes out. And you follow that tree root with your arm as far back in there as you can reach. And then you'll find that fish. He might bite you, but you'll feel his teeth, and then you grab him by the gill, and you yank him out. And you throw him in the sack. You reach back in there and find another one. I said, "You do it." "I'll watch you." So he did a couple of them. "All right, now you try." I said, "Okay." I stuck my hand back in there. There were all kinds of little stuffs crawling over your arms, wiggling over your arms, nibbling on your arms. So I got something, and I pulled it out, and it was a big old water snake. I screamed and hollered. He says, "Get back in there. There's fish in there." I said, "Right." So back in I went. I want to read just one little story here. This is pretty neat. It's called "Where Are They Now?" I think it would be good fitting for this summit today. This is by one of our elders that passed away this year. She was one of my teachers, Rosalie Bethel. It says, "On Table Mountain I sit and gaze down into the valley below, rivers and streams that flow down the mountainside, flowers of never-ending kinds, rocks of different colors and shapes, used in cooking and grinding our food, wild game feeding on clover and grass. We traveled through trails, pathways that animals have made, on to the coast where the ocean lies. When tired, we rested by a waterfall, waters covered with moss and fern, water so clean and pure that flowed we drank and bathed in. We rested early and were up at daybreak. For lighting system, we had the sunlight. Where are they now? The land was open far and wide for the human race, and for our furried and feathered friends. We lived in peace and happiness with freedom. We shared with all living things. The Creator has given us life and existence. He has provided us Glasses. With acorns of different varieties and nuts, greens of different kinds, berries both sweet and sour, wild tea of different kinds, roots and plants to be used for medication for sick and ill ones. Hot mud springs were given us, provided by the Creator through Mother Earth. All the elements that were needed for the body were provided. The American Indians were not destructive or wasteful. They took what they could use, and the rest was shared with other living things. Where are they now? As I leave Table Mountain and wander for home, I pass over rocks with holes in them. Where once my people ground and cooked their food, the pestles that were there made a beautiful sound. To the American Indian, it meant satisfaction from hunger. Now the pestles lay idle, deteriorating from age and weather, no more to be heard or used. The laughter of children was heard, ringing through the air without care or worry, expressing feelings of happiness and freedom. Where are they now? Stories, legends, and songs that were told and sung have disappeared with them. Just the wind and the rustling of the leaves can be heard. Maybe a wild game or two can be seen. All is silent. Where are they now? The American Indian is highly educated within the universe. It is their university. When an Indian is in the big cities, they are blind to the modern environment. But when city people come to the mountains, all they can see is beautiful scenery. They do not understand what lies in the hearts of the mountains. Thank you.
The elders say the fish were so thick on the river that you could cross the Klamath on their backs and never touch the water. Have you seen the Bucket Brigade downtown at the station? They're piercing the water lines, protesting the judge's decision. Our elders had their hard times 100 years ago, when they were driven from their homelands out of greed for trees and gold. I know there's trouble in our streams. If these fish come back, these wounds will heal. They shoved us from our native soil. But if we make our stories clear, and if these fish come back through sweat and tears, I'll clear the beds, you'll pull the weeds. Come salmon time, we'll make it clear there's still a lot of love